Welcome to Narrative Strokes. I stared down into the abyss of the elevator shaft. The rusted chains swayed, some of them gently moving, as if disturbed by an unseen breeze. The darkness below was absolute, like a void that no light could pierce. The warning carved into the metal at the rim of the shaft echoed in my mind. Going down is the only way out. I gripped the nearest chain, feeling the cold metal bite into my palm. There was no other choice. The path behind me, the misted tunnel, felt like it would swallow me whole. The rotating red lights, the crawling shadows, everything about it screamed danger. But this felt like a one-way ticket to something far worse. Still, I had to know what was down there. I swallowed my fear and took a step closer to the shaft. The chains were old, some of them cracked, others hanging loosely. They didn't look reliable, but it was the only way down. I had no idea what awaited below, but the options above weren't comforting either. With a deep breath, I wrapped my hands around the nearest chain and began to climb down. The descent was slow, my fingers gripping the rusted links tightly. The shaft felt deeper than it looked, endless. My feet found little grip on the metal walls, forcing me to slide down. Every inch of the climb made my heart race faster. The air grew colder the lower I went, and a strange pressure began to build in my chest, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on me. The only sound was the faint scraping of my shoes against the metal and my heavy breathing. But every few seconds, I thought I could hear something else, a distant humming sound, deep and low. It echoed from the very depths of the shaft, vibrating through the chains and into my bones. I tried to ignore it, but it seemed to grow louder the further I descended. My hands were slick with sweat now, and the chains were starting to feel thinner. The uncertainty of what lay below gnawed at me, but I couldn't stop. Something in the back of my mind kept telling me that this was the only way out, that there was no going back now. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw it. A faint light, barely perceptible, glowing from below. It flickered like a dying star. I was close. The air around me shifted as I neared the bottom, thick with the smell of rust and old metal. The light grew brighter the closer I got, but it wasn't comforting. It was cold, unwelcoming. And as I descended further, I realized with horror that the light was coming from something else. Not the cold pulse of emergency systems like before, but the erratic flicker of something left running, something maintained. And that meant someone or something had been down here recently. The chain suddenly jerked as I hit the bottom of the shaft, and I landed hard on the concrete floor, my knees buckling beneath me. I stumbled forward, catching myself against the wall. The air smelled of decay, damp and heavy. The light source was revealed, an old, broken-down generator, sputtering in a dark corner of the room. Its dim, flickering light barely lit up the small area around it. I glanced around. The walls were made of smooth, black stone, slick with condensation and grime. There was no obvious exit, just more hallway, stretching off into more darkness. The humming was louder now, more insistent, as though it was coming from deep within the stone, emanating from the very walls themselves. I turned my attention to the far side of the room. Another tunnel, this one smaller, narrower, and darker than the one I had just come down from. But it wasn't the tunnel that caught my attention. It was the figure standing at the entrance. It was a man, or something that used to be a man. The figure was tall and thin, its skin stretched tight over bone, its eyes hollow and black. It didn't move, but I could feel its gaze, cold and calculating, locked on me. I froze, my breath hitched in my throat, my body trembling in place. It didn't speak, didn't move. It just watched. Then, as if on cue, the whispers returned, louder this time. They weren't coming from the figure. They were coming from the walls, from the very air around me. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel the panic rise in my chest. I needed to move. But the figure, whatever it was blocking the only path forward. It wasn't giving me a choice. It was waiting for me to make the next move. I didn't dare approach it. My instinct screamed for me to turn and run, to flee down the smaller tunnel. But something inside me froze. It was like I was paralyzed, caught between the pull of the unknown and the overwhelming presence of the creature before me. The figure tilted its head slightly, an almost imperceptible motion. It didn't look human. Its neck was too long, its body too thin, and its eyes. I couldn't tear my gaze away. They were black, hollow, and seemed to absorb the very light around them. I slowly backed away, keeping my eyes on it. My pulse pounded in my ears, and my stomach twisted with fear. I had no idea what this thing was, or why it was watching me. But I knew I wasn't meant to be here. I wasn't supposed to have made it this far. Then the humming grew louder, and I felt it reverberating deep within my chest. The walls around me seemed to close in, the air growing heavy with an oppressive presence that I couldn't escape. The figure finally moved. It didn't walk, it simply shifted. In the blink of an eye, it was no longer at the entrance to the tunnel, but standing directly in front of me. Its elongated limbs twitched as it reached for me, its fingers so thin and long that they looked like they could wrap around my skull with ease. I staggered backward, falling to the cold, damp floor. The world seemed to tilt, spinning faster and faster. The whispers were louder now, almost deafening, and the humming was like a pounding drum in my ears. In a panic, I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the narrow tunnel, not caring where it led, only knowing that I had to escape. My breath came in ragged gasps, and the sound of the creature's footsteps behind me sent a chill down my spine. The walls seemed to stretch endlessly as I ran, the flickering lights above me casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to twist and writhe like living things. I reached the entrance to the tunnel, but before I could step through, the ground beneath me cracked open. The tunnel had collapsed, leaving nothing but an endless pit. I turned around to face the figure, my heart sinking. It was gone, but I could still hear its whispers echoing in my mind. The floor beneath me trembled, the walls creaked and groaned, and the air became thick with an overwhelming sense of dread. The room was closing in around me, the walls shifting as if alive. The humming grew louder, and the whispers became clearer. And then, everything went dark. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, then comment down below and let me know what you think. I'll see you next time with another story. Until then, keep smiling and don't forget to like and subscribe.